Welcome to the L&D Rant podcast, an opportunity to hear from key figures in L&D, airing their grievances and frustrations, but most importantly, also sharing their solutions. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting a truly unique figure in the world of executive coaching, Steph Tranter. Steph's not your average executive coach. Steph masterfully blends the realms of coaching and therapy. What sets Steph apart is her combination of practical corporate experience and profound insights from psychology and therapy. She's not just an executive coach, and she's not just a counsellor. She's a dynamic fusion of both. Steph is also the author of the book Leap: How to Be More You and Find a Career You Love. In 2011, Steph made her own leap from the corporate world to entrepreneurship, starting her successful coaching business. Her clients span from senior managers to C-suite executives across a diverse range of industries and organizations. Today, Steph joins me to share her frustrations about how we're not taught to understand our own unique natural talents. So get ready to dive into an enlightening conversation with the exceptional Steph Tranter.
Thank you very much. Very delighted to be here. I'm raring to go with my rant. We've been ranting already.
Good to hear.
To rant. I'm revved up to rant.
So for people that maybe don't know you and not familiar with what you do, can you just maybe expand a little bit on, how you work with individuals and organizations these days? What kind of led you into doing what you do now?
Oh my goodness, so many questions. So I describe myself as a hybrid executive coach. And what I mean by that is that I merge the worlds of coaching and therapy, where a lot of coaches don't tend to go deeper, and a lot of therapists don't tend to have the kind of practical future goal-based focus of coaching. And I kind of merge the two because I don't think I can help someone unless we look at someone's whole life, in terms of, so I'll do your traditional kind of coaching, but actually where it feels appropriate, I'll go a bit deeper and understand someone more at their personal level, more at their emotions, more some of the beliefs that drive them. I'll go deeper into that individual to help them. So that's kind of where I sort of feel like I may be slightly different to other executive coaches. And I guess I've been doing that now. So I've been running my own freelance coaching business. That sounds grand, but it's just me. For 12 and a half years now. So I've been doing that 12 and a half years. And primarily focus on probably people in more senior roles, maybe directors, C-suite, but open to anyone really who generally finds themselves at a career crossroads. And because our conversations are never just about their career, that's just the starting point. And it tends to be people who have woken up one day and gone, oh my God, hang on a second, I've achieved quite a lot, I've got here, but I'm waking up going, I don't think I'm happy. And so we end up talking quite a lot about their identity. We talk quite a lot about confidence. We talk quite a lot about emotional resilience and those. And also, I suppose, identity as a leader and things of that nature. But those are the core things that I tend to focus on with people, whether that's in individual coaching or running workshops about building emotional resilience, or workshops around understanding myself better in the context of my career and where I want to go. Hence my book, which is all about the most, the techniques and the skills and the tools that have helped my coaching clients the most when they've started off at a career crossroads, coming to me and saying, Steph, I don't know what I want to do, or I want to get here and I don't think I can get there. And so that's sort of like a very a very practical approach to helping people understand themselves better and find a career they love and be more themselves, I suppose. So yeah, that was a bit of a ramble around what I do, but that's the core thing that I do. And I work in a variety of different with a variety of different organizations. I'm really fortunate in the last sort of 12 years I've had the opportunity to work with charities like the Alzheimer's Society, to small tech startups, to big global organizations like Harrods and WeWork, and some pharma companies, and more recently in sport, which I've totally loved. And I've had the kind of real, it sounds a bit cheesy, but it feels like a real privilege to work with some Olympic teams and some people in Paralympic teams, where they've really, some of the things we're going to talk about today, where they've absolutely seen a very tangible impact using the kind of approaches that I used with them. So, and then prior to that, where you and I know each other, I grew up in Tesco. So I had a big old corporate career, 11 years in Tesco, starting on the checkouts, just funding my way through university, and ended up in the Group Leadership Academy, which was where actually I learned quite a lot of my trade. Tesco, for all its wonderful sins, actually was so far ahead of its time, which you'll know. That I felt like, you know, the stuff that I learned then has really, you know, landed me in good stead for kind of what I do now, really.
I had no idea you'd been running your own business for over 12 years now, Steph. That's fantastic. What an achievement. And listening to you talk about what you're doing, I mean, that must be so rewarding. That's a lovely space to be working in.
It feels really positive. Yeah. And I think it's interesting you point that out, because I do transition into some of the stuff that other people might run away from because it feels like therapy, you know. So I'm helping people with anxiety or depression. You know, a lot of people who've gone to counselling then get recommended to me, and I'm not dismissing counselling at all. I don't know what's going on with my voice at the moment. Sorry, I'm not dismissing counselling at all, but they often say actually they come to me, and because of this blended approach of understanding to go deeper, but also kind of practical actions on how do we get through this, they kind of say, actually, this has helped me more than 1 or 2 sessions of you has helped me more than 2 or 3 years of counselling. And that's been really rewarding, because I don't, I don't know, there is some, it's a responsibility helping people with serious stuff like that. But I never wanted to be a counsellor because I didn't want to go with the really, really serious stuff, you know. Sure. But I get the opportunity to help people with certain things, but help them move towards something very positive around. Sorry, I don't know if that made any sense, but your point around it does feel really rewarding, and I feel really fortunate to be able to help people on more than just a surface level without having to be a full-on counsellor. I suppose maybe that was my point.
And you obviously work with, you know, a lot of senior leaders, managers, but particularly at that exec level. And I'm just wondering, because, you know, I've worked for a number of organizations where, whilst organizations have been very passionate about implementing coaching, particularly at that exec level where actually I think it's really needed, there has been some resistance that I've seen in the past, you know, and I think some of that may have been that people don't want to kind of admit that they need coaching, as if it's maybe a bad thing, or as if, you know, at the level that they're at, they maybe shouldn't need it. They should know everything by now. I mean, do you still sort of come across that kind of attitude?
Yes, totally. I mean, some places it's not broad brush, right? So some places have that embrace coaching, get it, understand its impact, and some just don't. But I think I think you're absolutely spot on. What I see in execs is they are human beings, right? But what happens is they get to a certain level and they expect they expect that they should have had it all figured out by now, and they should be the one that's strong, and they should be the one who's in control and all of that. And then other people almost sometimes maybe people who work for them, or, you know, lower down in the organization in hierarchical terms, are looking, going, well, you know, they have that same expectation of them, actually. Well, you should have it all worked out. So there's this growing culture of, well, you're at this senior level, so you must be fine. And they're not. They're human beings. They're not fine. And actually that can compound the issue. I quite like how I've found myself going into these more sort of deeper conversations, because at that exec level, I think coaching and counselling are seeing you only go when you're broken, and they don't want to feel like they're broken. So actually, like, to your point, you don't have to be broken to go and get some help. It might just be about just supporting you. It might just be about helping you get clarity on who you are and where you want to go. You know, it can be for very positive reasons. It's not just about being broken. They're not the sort of people who might go to counselling, so I can bring it in through the back door. You know, coaching is a bit more acceptable than counselling. Right. So, you know, actually, because I feel I can come in and help them with some of that, there's a bit about saving face. I definitely think there's a bit about that. I think you're spot on with that.
Yeah. I think we see that with you know, with learning and development as well, actually, you know, that sort of senior level. You know, we're working with sort of CLOs, L&D directors, learning leaders, and I think there's a similar kind of pressure, actually. And I think, you know, if you're in an L&D role, a senior L&D role, you're definitely feeling the pressure that you're supposed to know everything, because you're there, kind of advising other people in the organization. And again, it's the same is true. Everybody can benefit from coaching, from mentoring, I think, at any stage in their career. You've got such a lot of experience of working with different organizations, different people at different levels. I mean, getting to the crux of this, Steph, what is it that's frustrating you the most when it comes to our industry?
So I think it's better now. So 10, 20 years ago, this was worse. So I think it is better now. But it's to your point around feeling like we have to know everything. I think there is still too much of a focus and value placed on knowledge and experience and academic qualifications. You were hinting at that kind of imposter syndrome, and I know we chatted a bit about this before, and the frustration we both have with this kind of term around imposter syndrome. And I think, I wrote down 4 things, right, that really frustrate me, and they're already linked, right? So it's this: we misplace the amount of value we put on knowledge and experience over something far more powerful, which we'll talk about when we talk about kind of the solution. I think the imposter syndrome has grown to be this massive thing that everybody talks about, and I don't think we give the right advice to solve it. I think we still take a sheep dip approach in L&D. I think it's how do we get everyone through as quickly as possible in all these different things, and how do we make it how do we just shove a load of knowledge and model, the amount of workshops that are just model-tastic. It's like one model and this model, and it's almost like I'm going to show my credibility as a learning and development person because look at all my knowledge, I'm going to shove it all down at you, and let's get you all through as quick as possible. Let's put 30 people through, and like I say, it's not as bad as that anymore, but that's still rife, right? And it's still because we're valuing knowledge and experience over something else. And I think this kind of links to this. I feel really sad that lots of people are spending a lot of money on qualifications, like ridiculous amounts of money to get masters, to get degrees. You're talking like 10 grand a year, and that's ultimately 30 or 40 grand, right, to get an academic qualification, when a lot of the times that isn't giving you what you need to be the best practitioner in what you're trying to do. So for me, it all boils down to this: why are we putting so much energy and effort into what we know and what our experience is, whereas actually what we were talking about with coaching, why I think I love coaching as much, is because it's about an individual approach. It's understanding you as an individual. We were having a bit of a chat about dyslexia earlier, and actually there's a whole, it's wonderful now because we're talking about neurodivergent people in different ways, whereas we used to talk about learning styles, didn't we? We said we've got 3 learning styles and we've got to make sure we fit that into how we design things. I don't think people have moved on from that, and I just think that there's yes, there are different ways of learning, but there's more than flipping 3, there's more than 3, and there's anyway. So I don't know, that was my kind of quite contained rant, actually, and I'm sure but that's the kind of, I'm sort of hesitating around saying what my solution is, because I know kind of that we're going to get to that, but that's probably where the core of it is. I feel really sad because I see so many people come to me for coaching where the problem may never have occurred if from an early age we took a different approach to how people are taught and what they're taught from school onwards, because I do think from school onwards we're taught that there's this limited set of subjects that you get to choose from, and if you're no good at any of them, well then you're just not worthy, right? And if you can't learn in a certain way, then you come out of school feeling like you're crap and not really knowing who you are, or what's important to you, or what's great about you, or where your natural talents are, or where your natural strengths are. You just come out going, well, I don't fit really, but you were given a really small box in which to fit, right? And then that continues throughout our entire lives when we talk about development and when we carry on training people in the corporate world. if you get training. But there we go.
I mean, what do you see is the impact of that then? Why is this such a challenge? You know, if people are coming out of school, they're feeling like that, they've not had that kind of personalized experience that ideally they should have. They don't feel like they fit in a box. Again, you've listed some things where that can be compounded in the workplace as well. What overall is the impact of that then?
Massive. I think you get people who fall into jobs and careers because they feel they should, because it's sensible, and that ends up meaning that they're actually not that content in life. And you know, that's a mild version, you know, just not very content. But a lot of people come to me with really low confidence, really high anxiety, depression, because throughout their whole lives they've made to feel like they don't fit. People suffer in burnout because they're so used to, they've taken their eye off of who they are, because no one's taught them how to understand who they are and what makes them great. So they fall into jobs that just don't suit them and don't fit them. And I think, you know, I don't have this researched and lots of evidence, you know, but just anecdotally from how people show up to me in coaching, no matter what industry they're in, I think they get suppressed in who they are so that they can follow the sensible route or the should route or the because they don't know who they are, just kind of where they fall into. And I just think it leads to just a lot of tension at work. I think it leads to a lot of as I said, anxiety and depression in people. I think it leads to burnout. I think it leads to difficult relationships at work. You know, I think it all starts with us as individuals, you know, and the knock-on effect in terms of an ecosystem, right, at work, and how that can affect. I think Richard Branson, I can't find where he said this. I keep trying to find it because I remember reading it once. He said that if everybody did what they most loved, all the problems of the world would be solved. And I love that because there's something very individual about the impact I see of what we were just talking about first as individuals. But then when you think about this ecosystem of the world within an organization, within a team, within, you know, a country, I think that's the impact of it, is if you're constantly made to feel wrong for the things that you love, and you don't fit, you'll never pursue them. So there's one aspect of life that isn't being solved or pursued or dealt with, impacted.
That's huge. That's a massive impact. And I guess in the job that you're doing, you're seeing a lot of the impact of this. You mentioned low confidence there being one of the things that potentially is impacted by this. And I know when you sort of mentioned your initial kind of 4 areas, imposter syndrome came up as one of them. What can you just elaborate a little bit more on that, the kind of link there? What's the frustration around you know, this term imposter syndrome, or how we're dealing with imposter syndrome?
There is no doubt people start new jobs, right? They get promoted, they start new jobs, they do anything new, and they're gonna feel like, shit, I don't know this company very well, I don't know this job very well, and so they're gonna feel like they don't know. And then because they have, it's almost like this term now that has this word that has got into the cultural psyche, right? And it's just like, that's how they label it. So I'm labeling it as imposter syndrome, right? When you read imposter syndrome, the definition of imposter syndrome, I Googled it because of course, right? It's the inability to believe that your success has been legitimately achieved as a result of your effort and skills, right? So it's an inability to believe that your success has been legitimately achieved as a result of your effort and skills. Also, when you look up the word imposter, right, it assumes, it means that you are assuming a false identity to deceive people, right? So if you're saying I'm suffering imposter syndrome, already you're creating this negative thing, probably subconsciously. But imposter is a really negative word, right? It's a really kind of, I am deliberately misleading you that I'm good enough to do this job, right? That's an awful thing to think about yourself. So that's one aspect of it, right? So let's just stop bloody calling it imposter syndrome and find a new flipping word, right? I.e., I just feel a little bit nervous because I don't know this company. Let's talk about the reality of what's going on for you. And I guess the link with my rant, I suppose, of what I am annoyed about, this placing value on knowledge and experience, is the reason why people feel imposter syndrome, because they've taken their eye off of what makes them uniquely great. They've taken their eye off of their natural strengths. They've taken their eye off what makes them uniquely great and impressive and brilliant and different from everybody else. So actually, if we're taught to value our differences, if we're taught to value the stuff that comes naturally to us rather than I think we've grown up in a culture where we've been taught to be rounded. We're taught to, you've got to be great at everything, cover everything, because otherwise you're going to fail. So make sure you've got everything covered. So our whole entire lives, we've been taught to focus on our weaknesses, because don't worry about the things you're good at, because you don't need to worry about that, because that's in the bag, right? Focus on where you're crap so you can bring yourself up, so you can be rounded. This is a perpetual belief that we are taught to do, right? And so therefore, you will never pay much attention to what you're naturally great at. You'll never pay natural attention to what your brilliant skills are that don't take any effort whatsoever. Because another thing is, here we go, she's got a rant going. But on another thing, we're taught to value hard work, right? But quite often our strengths don't take hard work because we love them, because they come so naturally to us. We don't notice them. It's really easy. We get frustrated with people who don't do the things that come naturally to us because we don't realize it comes so naturally to us and not to other people. So we don't spend that time really getting to know and value what's great about us. We spend the time trying to be rounded and trying to be fit into what somebody somewhere has told us we need to fit into to succeed and thrive in life. And that's why people come. And I know this, I feel I say this really confidently, because every single person who comes to me for coaching, I spend the first couple of sessions using a tool called Strength Scope, which is a fabulous tool which helps them identify what comes naturally to them. And if they've been suffering low confidence, which then often brings about anxiety as well. Sometimes we have to separate the two because they can present as very similar things. But you start talking to somebody about their strengths and they go, shit, I've never really thought about myself like that. Shit, I didn't realize empathy was a strength. Shit, I didn't realize. Wow, this is really refreshing, and there is a transformation in people, not suddenly, but it because you are beginning to get them to refocus. The reason why people are very low in confidence is because they are focusing on all the things that they're crap at. It feels as simple as that. It feels really simple, but ultimately it's where your focus is. And if we're teaching people to value knowledge and experience, because we're taking them through workshops that are model-tastic and full of theory and full of knowledge and full of, you've got to wait till you've got this experience and this experience, or you've got to get this academic qualification before you can feel confident and credible. If we're focusing on that, we are taking them away from really focusing on, actually, what have you already got and how do you harness that and how do you be more you and how do you... So does that answer your question? I've run out of steam now.
I don't think you run out of steam yet.
It answers my question, thanks. And I've had experience of strengths-based tools in the past. In fact, I think it was Strength Scope that I used, and I think it really opened my eyes actually to how you view things that you're good at, and actually how you even view your kind of inverted commas weaknesses or development areas. So yeah, I think they're great tools. You talked a bit about placing too much emphasis on formal qualifications earlier, and it just really resonated with me, because in the early sort of stages of my career, I was always put off applying for jobs that I knew I could do because they wanted someone with a degree. Now, when I left college, university just wasn't for me. I wanted to work and money, and so I didn't go to uni, and I was always really put off, probably for years. I mean, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe more. Until I met a recruitment manager who, rightly or wrongly, sat me down and said, look, a degree is more about the type of person that you are. They want a degree equivalent. Now, I didn't really understand what that meant at the time, but it did give me the courage to just apply for positions anyway, and just ignore the fact that, you know, I didn't have this magical degree that everybody apparently needed. And it never kind of put me off since. But I do think you're right. I think there is maybe a little bit too much emphasis put on formal qualifications. You know, not always, and I'm not against formal quals at all. But I do think sometimes we don't stop and ask ourselves if we need to be actually taking a particular qualification, or even if we need to be asking for someone to have completed a particular qualification to start a new job.
And I think you're right. You know, I've got nothing against academic qualifications whatsoever. I'm not against them. I think there's a lot of greatness in them. You know, I've done a degree and I've done a master's. They were in art and design, by the way, you know, so it wasn't, but I've also done a degree in psychology, right? And, and I learned, I did a very practical one in my art, and actually I like that. But I suppose the psychology one was good because it taught me psychological theories and the context but it spent probably 50% of the time teaching me how to write an academic essay. I had to spend a lot of time learning how to write an academic essay. You know, how do you structure it? How do you reference it, right? And that's a massive amount. I've spent like thousands of pounds being taught how to be an academic, actually, rather than how to be a practitioner. How do I apply the psychological theories I'm learning to helping people, you know? And it's fine if I wanted to then go on and carry on studying. I think we've just got a bit, I think where I wanted to say, actually, I got a bit sidetracked there. What I want to say is we've got lazy, and no one has gone back and gone, we need to analyze, are these academic qualifications giving people what they actually really, really need? Now, some are probably more practical than others, but like you said, you know, the person was saying, don't worry about whether you've got this qualification. We've almost gone, well, a qualification means this about a person, and that's what we need. But does it? Have you gone back and really checked that? Have you gone back and checked that? You know, what do you need? And we've gone and looked at these qualifications. Does that really give that person this?
Absolutely.
You know, you listen to someone like Ken Robinson, sadly passed away now, you know, and he talks very much about the academic world is just preparing you for the next part of the academic world, right? You know, it's not preparing you for the reality of life. Actually, education should be about encouraging creativity, diversity, flexibility, and understanding yourself, right? And that's the whole point. You take your strengths everywhere you go. And so therefore, you know, you can overcome imposter syndrome by going, actually, do you know what? I've got an empathy strength. So when I'm starting this new role, I'm going to turn that up, because actually life's about people. So if I can understand people, I'm going to start being able to connect with people. So that's going to help me in my next role. Or maybe I've got a creativity strength. So actually I can use that to help start solving some problems, or coming in and talking to people about things. I don't know, you know, actually what strengths have I got that can help me when I go in to this new role, to this new place, rather than focusing on, shit, I haven't got that BA or BSc or masters, or I don't know. I'm focusing on, well, I don't know the company, I don't know the people, I don't know their processes, I don't know. You know, it's to your point earlier, and if you don't mind me bringing this up, we talked about dyslexia. You know, again, most of your life and my experience of other people who have dyslexia, they've been taught that it's a bad thing. They've been taught it's a bad thing to have dyslexia, and you've got to do this, and this to fit in, you know, rather than actually beautifully what you were talking about now, it's seen as a skill. Actually, you know, you were saying LinkedIn has it as a dyslexic skill. And actually, how do we understand that? How do we understand what that brings? How do you use that? How do you accept that? And how do you value it? And how do you know how it helps you, rather than how it hinders you, and why it makes you wrong or different? And there's a whole wealth of other things that we could talk about in neurodivergent people. So much.
You've mentioned 4 very specific areas, Steph, in this podcast, and actually, as you said at the beginning, quite rightly, they all are really interconnected. I mean, looking at this as the bigger issue, the kind of lack of personalization, the lack of a kind of a strengths approach, and I appreciate a lot of this starts in school, in the education system. It's not something that we just encounter in the workplace, but how do we start to change things? How are we going to start to kind of move the dial on this?
I think there are probably many people who are already doing these things, right? So I don't think this is a broad brush, and I don't think that this is true for everybody, but I think it's true enough what we're talking about. And I think I wrote down 3 things, actually. I think the first one is first of all, thinking about how we design workshops, how we design programs, how we design development, and not thinking that I've got to cram in as much knowledge as possible, as much models. You know, it pains me when, you know, you sit somewhere and you've got death by PowerPoint and it's model after model after model, and it's me talking. Oh, we'll get a little bit of discuss a little bit about this more, you know. So I think it's first and foremost, when you're designing programs, workshops, try and think of it more of how does each person understand themselves in the context of what I'm trying to teach them. So if I'm going to show them maybe an influencing model, I'm not just going to spend loads of time on the theory and this, you know, they can go and read about that if they want to go read about it. It's actually, right, this is the model. How do you understand yourself in the context of this? You know, where are you strong on this? Where are you not so strong? It's almost like, how do you take the more coaching approach, right, within the design of a workshop? So the workshop isn't just a space of here's loads of info, it's here's a tiny bit of info. It comes back to, right, the classic 70-20-10, you know, here's a little bit of information here, you know, and then how do you understand it in the context of yourself and me, and you give space for people to understand themselves, understand other people in the context of that. So I think it comes down to the design of the workshop or the program that you're trying to get them through. I think it comes down to selling the benefit. I know this is going to sound a bit contrived, but I do think, how do you bring coaching more into learning experiences? Because that's the only way that's one of the only ways you're going to get a truly individual approach to someone experiencing what they're being taught and how they understand themselves in the context of what they're being taught, and understand their own kind of what stops you doing this, and how can it help you, and how do we understand yourself? You know, you can have more of that. Because I think, again, when you come back to, we try and put 30-40 people through a workshop because it's efficient and it's commercially more efficient, and get people through and we get the numbers and we say we've trained all these people, but we don't but actually it's probably more expensive and it probably takes longer. But to have a more transformational experience, you need much more smaller groups, because then you can have much more of an individual experience with it. So I think it does come down to how we design the workshops, how we support individuals through it, and you know, how we helping them understand themselves in the context of what they're doing, rather than just transferring knowledge and make it more practical. You know, I just think it's just, let's just take away from this desire to just keep giving them information. There's no one wants to just sit, you know, and just understanding people and coming from the strengths of actually each bit that you design. How does someone understand what their strengths are, and how do they learn from other people in terms of what their strengths are and where they're great at, and knowing that there's just
I mean, this is not just the role of L&D though, right? I mean, there are other people in the organization that need to be taking accountability for this.
Again, I think I learned quite a lot in Tesco, that they did a really good job at engaging stakeholders, engaging senior people, not only in the reasons behind why L&D is really important and why development's really important. There was a lot of good selling, right? Selling, and I think that's in your CLO program, isn't it? You know, the ability to market L&D and the purpose of it. And I think we do need skills in that in L&D in terms of helping you sell the benefits of it. But yeah, they did a really good job of selling that, but also making it everybody's responsibility. So if your CEO is not behind it, then the rest of the organization isn't going to be behind it, right? And you get pockets of people. So I think I do think there is a role, like I was saying before, there's some organizations that love coaching and I don't have to do a big sell or anything like that, and they'll constantly come and, Steph, can you coach this, can you coach, you know, and it's brilliant because you can totally see that they embrace it. and they embrace that belief that what's right for the individual is right for the company or right for the organization. I mean,
you have seen organizations that really do embrace this as an approach, and that
totally, and people and leading HR directors and CEOs who, you know, it's wonderful and it's refreshing, and they absolutely go, I'm not living in fear, I'm not living in control land, I'm not living in this kind of I've got to manipulate everybody, I'm too, you know, because I think a lot of that is a fear of, if we let people be themselves, they'll leave. If we let people be themselves, they'll I don't know, they cause trouble or whatever. But you know, a lot of people are afraid of giving coaching because they do worry, well, what if I leave? And even the people who come to coaching go, I don't feel I can talk to you about my career because part of it is about maybe wanting to leave. And well, you know, they've asked me to come and help you, and to help you we have to look at this whole bigger picture. If we don't face into the whole bigger picture, so so I think if a company doesn't believe what's right for the individual is right for the organization, if a company doesn't believe in that individual approach or in that the value of learning, development and coaching, it's a bloody hard place to be.
It's positive to hear that you're working with organizations that are embracing this, and that they're looking at more kind of personalized ways to develop individuals. That's great. That's really heartening. Clearly there's a long way to go. I mean, there's some great ideas and suggestions that you've come up with. If there's someone listening to this podcast and they're thinking, all of that's great, and I'm absolutely on it, I'm moving in that direction, but what's the kind of first thing I should do? Is there a quick win here? Is there any advice that you'd give anyone?
If you don't know about positive psychology and the strengths approach, go and look into that. And the whole premise is honing in on you as an individual, not you as a category, not you as a yellow or a blue or an I or an E. It's you as an individual with a unique set of real word strengths, you know, creativity, critical thinking, empathy, strategic mindedness, blah, you know, relationship building, lead, you know, all these, lots of lovely real. So that's what I do, is research positive psychology, watch the Ken Robinson. I'm giving you lots actually. Watch the Ken Robinson School Kill Creativity.
I will share a link to that actually with this.
Sean Acker's Happy to Better Work, great talk. But where's the science, Steph? How you prove this? Because it all sounds a bit fluffy. Read Sean Acker's book, The Happiness Advantage. It is rife with data and science around the impact that positive psychology can have on individuals and organizations. Martin Seligman's seen as the father of kind of positive psychology.
I think Ken Robinson and Sean Ackers are probably two of my most favourite TED Talks. And not just because they're really interesting, really insightful, but because they're just so engaging and actually really very funny as well.
They're both hilarious.
Yeah.
Excellent recommendations. Thank you. Steph, thank you so much for joining me today. You've been engaging, insightful, really interesting, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. So thank you ever so much.
Pleasure. I felt like I needed to get that all out. So thank you. Thank you for giving me the space to do that.